Hi everyone, it's Eve Blewitz from spiritgirl.com and welcome to the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast. I'm super excited to be here with you today and with our very special guest, Nancy Collier. Nancy Collier is a psychotherapist in a private practice based in New York City, an ordained interfaith minister, mindfulness teacher, relationship coach, author, and one of our favorite people right now, right around the world and in Australia, because Nancy has a brand new book out and many books, but she's going to help us when it comes to our addiction to social media and also our addiction to thinking. Nancy, welcome to the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast and welcome to our global audience. How are you today?
I am very well and delighted to be here and to be visiting Australia virtually.
Yeah, well, Nancy, I've got to give my auntie Lily a massive shout out because she absolutely, yeah. Hello, Auntie Lily, because we have Nancy Collier. And Nancy, you have so many fans, not only in America, but in Australia and globally, because we love your words of wisdom. We love your books. We love your hands-on experience with real people in your practice, and then all of the work you do. But before we dive into your books, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I started actually a long time ago in the field, believe it or not, of television. And I was a television producer. I was also in the horse show world and trained and rode and was a kind of a big equestrian in the field. And I got to a point in my life where I wanted to go deeper. I was having a whole lot of fun. And at the same time, I felt a very strong drive to dive into people's lives, to dive into their stories. You know, as a talk show producer, you can only cut the top surface and you're really just trying to get ratings. But I wanted to really know people at a deeper level and to give people the space to be heard without judgment, without interpretation. I don't do interpretive work per se, I do awareness work. So to give space to what was really true for people without having to put them in a box or any of that. And that led me to psychology. And then because I was raised in Eastern spirituality, luckily, that was an incredible gift. I was always interweaving my own meditation practice, my own study of Buddhism and non-duality and all of these sorts of things into helping people because it was so profoundly helpful in my own life in terms of becoming more conscious, becoming more peaceful, and not being dragged around by the contents of my mind all the time. So little by little, you know, I added in the ministry because you can use any word you want, but where is God in all this was always a question for me. Where is grace? And, you know, I needed to go back and really kind of understand, not just practice, but understand more about all these different spiritual paths. Became a spiritual counselor. And so then, you know, it all kind of wove together to this mishmash where I can write for Psychology Today, write books, also see clients. And it's a life, God willing, that works. It's a life that really I love.
Yeah, well, we love your life because your life fills our own cup up and helps us in these very challenging times, Nancy, even before the pandemic and during this pandemic and well beyond this pandemic for many generations to come. So thank you for following your heart and soul and you are so blessed to learn about, I guess, spirituality or
Early.
the Buddhist principles or philosophies at such a young age.
It
That's
was such a
incredible.
gift. Absolutely.
Yeah.
To be raised in that kind of consciousness where there is awareness. There isn't really a narrative that's right or wrong, but there is a basic trust in one's own inherent goodness. And, you know, as a therapist, I meet so many people, particularly Westerners, who don't believe in their basic goodness. They may have been raised in one religion or another religion, but they've been taught essentially to doubt, be afraid of, and fundamentally distrust their own knowing.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing, I think, in the Buddhist path and the non-duality path is that under all of it, under all the ideas, the thoughts, the preferences, the opinions, none of which you are, there is this basic awareness, which is good.
Yeah.
And that as a starting ground is, yes, incredibly lucky, because it takes care of about 90% of the problem.
Yeah, you're so right, because we got raised that we are our thoughts. So what we think is who we are. So when I even look over the mental health journey or the mental health stigma, I grew up knowing as a child, if someone's, lost their mind, they're mad, or if someone is mentally ill, they get locked up in they used to call it the madhouse. So
Yes.
with all of these things, we got really frightened about our mind and really frightened with our thoughts. You, Nancy, are helping to shift that with your work in teaching people that we are not our thoughts and we are not our mind, as in there is more to us as a whole. Can you share more about that for someone out there who might be now in this global pandemic really worried, their thoughts are really negative, they're really anxious, and they really are believing these thoughts like there's no space between the thought and them?
Right. That is the human condition. And during this pandemic, we've been in what we hate the most, which is a state of not knowing. Everything feels unknown. Everything feels really scary. And that's because we can't plot it out. We can't figure out what's going to happen. And so that's a place where our mind kind of goes crazy, and it really, really likes to spin, rock and roll. And because we are conditioned to believe that everything that comes out of our mind is true and has to be paid attention to, we've been on this incredible roller coaster of chasing every wild, crazy, negative, fearful, all of these thoughts, believing that we have to make them stop in order for us to be okay, to get our ground back. And also, as you say, that we are them. So there's no us separate from them. But in a sense, one of the basic misunderstandings that I talk about in the book, excuse me, is this idea that if we keep thinking about what frightens us and keep thinking about what bothers us, that we're going to find some answer to it in all the thinking. So we keep going back to the same rabbit holes, the same catastrophes, the same grievances, the same regrets, the same all of it, because we really believe that thinking is the answer to everything that ails us. So the first thing we have to recognize is that sometimes if peace is what we want, we need to stop thinking about what's bothering us. There isn't going to be some diamond at the bottom of this rubble of thought. There isn't. 90% of thoughts are repetitive, 95% negative. The answer is not in your thoughts. You've tried this. You know this. You've been down this rabbit hole hundreds of times for most of these scenarios. So the first thing, maybe I stepped even further. Maybe that's the second thing. The first thing is to recognize how much suffering your thinking is causing you, how much pain it actually creates to have to keep going over these fears, reliving them, going over how you're going to handle it differently, going over who said what to you that you didn't like, going over everything you've ever done in your life that you could have done better, right? How much suffering that is causing you, and it's not helping you. The second piece of it is recognizing that what if, because your thoughts say something doesn't mean they're true? That's kind of a crazy notion. What if the fact that you have a thought doesn't mean you have to think about it? They could happen, but you don't have to actually turn your attention towards those thoughts and follow them. What if you shifted your attention from the one thinking to the one that thinker is talking to, you? So these are sort of three fundamental shifts, right? That start to put us a little bit at a distance from our thoughts. So there's an us, and then there are thoughts. Just like the pancreas makes insulin, the mind makes thoughts, not a big deal. It's like having an out of order computer kind of burping up a ticker tape of stuff all the time. Go ahead. I don't have to pay attention to all of it. Once you start practicing, whether it's meditation or it's just practicing looking at what's happening in your mind, you start to find a little bit of freedom. Like, oh, because I have a thought doesn't mean I have to think about it.
I love that, Nancy. The way you just described that, I literally went, I got it. I just got it. Like how you talked. And I think when you referred to the organ, and when you refer to, the brain and it just has thoughts and it thinks and it's working. I do remember a guru once, or a spiritual meditation teacher, when I was really struggling with, I can't meditate. And why is that? I've got thoughts. And I remember him saying, but that's a good thing. That means you're alive and your brain's working. You want thoughts. And I was like, what? And he said, think about it like your heart. You don't want to do meditation and for your heart stopping. You don't want your heart to stop beating.
That's right.
It's like that.
That's
and
right.
So Nancy, we've been programmed to think, like, obviously thought we shouldn't be having them, or thoughts are bad, or this thought, we've never referred to thoughts as just being a thing that our brain does.
Absolutely. Yes. That's where self-help, I think, goes wrong. Because self-help, I shouldn't say wrong. It doesn't go far enough, because self-help is still telling you, let's replace the negative thoughts with positive thoughts, right? Great. Okay, well, if I'm going to make up a narrative, I might as well make up a good one, because it's all made up anyway, right? Because in reality, something happens. I don't know, we have a pain in our foot, and we're off to the races with a narrative about it. Oh my God, I'm going to die from this. This is some dreadful thing, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, so self-help tells you, say something positive. Oh, that's an encouragement to put my running shoes on and go running. Great, I'll take that one. But in a sense, it's still relying on the contents of our thoughts for our basic well-being. And what I'm trying to offer in this book is an even more expansive freedom, which is my basic okayness does not depend upon the words coming out of my brain. They can be good, they can be not good, they can be scary. A lot of people have what I call random intrusive thoughts. So they're standing on the subway platform and they hear, you're going to jump, or they hear you're going to push somebody. They're not suicidal or homicidal. Or one client of mine who every time he went to the theater, he would hear, yell something out, yell something out. But we're trained to be so afraid of what our thoughts are saying and we imagine them as some deep, deep red flags, from our unconscious that we have to go figure out what they mean because they have some secret knowledge. They don't. So I'm trying to help people move past self-help and past this idea of correcting the contents of your mind, because when push comes to shove and the going gets tough, those positive narratives that we've now created fall short. They don't work. It's like putting a hat on dirty hair. They cover up the underlying negative fear and all of that. So we need something that's even more powerful than just a new narrative.
I love that, Nancy. So in that situation, when the person goes to the theater, when people are having thoughts, though, can they sometimes just pick up something they've listened to in a movie? Over the time that we're watching movies and watching content and listening to music, can it be possible even that thought that person had isn't from their own heart and soul, and that they could have just watched a movie, 3 years ago, and it's just boom, popped up again because the mind has been triggered?
Yes.
And
It's that random. I think you make a good point. A lot of what people think about too, or what the thoughts that come, because I don't even want to we have such an idea that, our thoughts are brilliant, our thoughts are fascinating, we're madly in love with our thoughts. All we want to do is have, 4 hours at a time to think about our thoughts, right? But so I don't even want to give authorship to ourselves about our thought. But most of what thoughts are coming down the pike are one of three things, I would say. They are grievances. I don't like this. I don't like the way this person said that. I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like the way they took care of me. At the center of the grievance is this little me. I don't like what happened to me. I don't like the way my identity is coming, whatever it is. So that when we unpack a repetitive grievance thought, we want to remember that what that mind, again, we're on the side of the mind. We're not trying to get rid of the mind, just like your friend said about the heart. We're just, you keep repeating that story. Wow, you're trying to get some empathy. You're trying to have that happened to you matter. So you keep repeating it in some way to make it feel differently, to have it repeated enough that you get some satisfaction that it's not okay that they went with the red color, not the blue one you wanted, right? So when we start to have empathy for what those thoughts are really trying to make happen, why we keep revisiting. If we look at something like regret, we're trying to make the thing that we did, we don't like what we did. We're trying to make it okay. We're trying to have it come out a different way again, right? Maybe there's some way I could think about that would make it okay. I made that choice. What we're resisting is that was the best I had in that moment. Let me let that be. Was it what I would do now? Maybe not. But it was my best. Even if I knew that there was a better option, it was my best because it was the choice I made. That's the best I had because I made that choice. We resist letting ourselves be a work in progress. That's what I had that day. Now I move on. Or if we look at something like repeating suffering, we go back to our pain again and again. Why? Because we're trying to, again, take care of that pain. The only way we know how to take care of it is to keep repeating it. And it feels like to let go and move forward and stop bringing that pain into every moment would be like we're leaving a dog on the side of the road. We're abandoning our own pain. We're saying our pain didn't matter. It happened for naught. If we stop thinking it into existence, thinking it into importance, who will care for it? And what we don't recognize there is when we've gone through suffering, as we all have, that pain comes with us. It changes us. It is part of us. We don't have to think it into existence. It is within us. So, I think of one client who had the ultimate horror happen where her teenage daughter was killed in a car accident. And every day she went over and over and over it. And of course we understand it. Of course we do. And she was not willing to let go of her daughter. But what she came to realize is that her daughter walks with her. Her daughter showers with her. Her daughter eats with her. Her daughter is never gone, but she doesn't need to think her into being at every moment. So when we start to unpack these really commonplace rabbit holes of thought, we sort of join the side, if you will, of our mind. We get it, sweetie. You're just a little bit primitive. And just to say one more thing on that point, the mind, you have to understand, believes that the only way we can exist is if we're thinking. It thinks, as you said, that we are our thoughts. So if we stop thinking, we stop existing, right? Descartes, I think, therefore I am. That's how we are raised. That's what we think. So it's very terrifying for our mind to imagine even a gap, even a tiny gap in thought. The minute we notice we have a gap, oh, wow, where'd I go? Oh my God, who can I tell about this? Look at me, I had a gap. Oh my God, we double down, more me, more me. Because we're very scared. Is there a me if I'm not thinking? And that is actually something we have to discover. That as we sit here in awareness and watch our thoughts as the witness, and as we experience being in our bodies, in our just sense of being, not doing, not figuring something out, not planning something, no agenda, just being, we find we're still here. And that is very exciting because it means that we're more than our thoughts. But again, we bring that compassion to our mind. Don't stop. Don't stop. I work with so many people around mindfulness, and everybody wants to talk about, I want to talk about thinking. Let's keep talking. I want to understand thinking. Let's talk more. But don't stop and take a deep breath. Don't do it. But let's think about not thinking.
Wow, Nancy, you just really just shared so much wisdom there. And in particular, the story, and anyone who's lost a loved one in any time through a tragic accident or perhaps through COVID or something out of their control, how you explained how that person can be with you in every moment is a much better way than just thinking and going over the tragedy and the suffering in the mind, but
That's
just
right.
having their presence with their spirit and their energy with that woman. What a gift. But Nancy, you've written a whole book about this, Can't Stop Thinking, because there are a couple addictions that obviously we are struggling with at the moment. And this was before the pandemic, and this is during the pandemic and well beyond the pandemic. One of them is obviously the mobile phone and the social media apps. before social media came out on our mobile phone, I know personally I felt not as overwhelmed. I didn't feel as under, I wasn't under that much pressure as a blogger back then, as a spa blogger. You just wrote a blog once a week. People came to your website or your blog site, and it was a very inward focus. So I only created when it arose from me, my heart and soul. And then I would write, I would share and connect one-on-one. So it was a very one-on-one, intimate, readership based, which had nothing to do with the way I looked. So fast forward to 2021, and since your last book has come out, The Power of Off, we've got obviously one of our addictions is when I look at people at the coffee shop or in the line at the supermarket or anywhere. Back in the old days, people would just sit and be able to sit with nothing in their hands and not looking at anything. And now every spare minute we have, we're on our mobile phone, looking at our newsfeed on Facebook, looking at Instagram, really also being an absolute sticky beak. People are addicted to looking at what other families are doing, what other people are doing, and they're so focused on what other people are doing. Now, people tell me they don't have time to meditate, and I say this: have you got time to look at your social media feed? Oh, yes. Yeah, I've got time for that. I'm like, well, you've got time to meditate. I had to become disciplined, Nancy, to go, you know what? This is utter BS. I do have time to meditate. But the first thing I needed to do was not grab my mobile phone in the morning.
That's right.
And I discovered I needed to connect to my own self, my inner self, my own breath first, and do my mindfulness practice gratitude, grounding, yoga, being grateful for the sunrise, just very basic old school stuff.
Yes.
That once just came normal and natural, but I totally got an addiction to, wanting to pick up social media and go, okay, I posted something last night. I wonder who's responded.
Yes.
And without realizing I had this addiction.
Yeah.
And when we did get the social media apps, it was under the notion that this was for socializing. We were going to now socialize through this app, which is another load of BS.
Yes.
Because what I've discovered is we then have investors or big tech companies who are saying the new currency is attention. It's not about money, it's attention. And then we had other gurus saying, okay, you're an influencer, you're a blogger, you need to post 3 times a day now. And only if you post 3 times a day, you're going to be relevant. If you're not posting every day, you're going to be left behind. You got to do more. And then we had every coach on how to market yourself, how to be a walking billboard. Okay, with all this crazy noise, then comparison, because what I else discovered is when you're looking at other people and on a visual body image platform, meaning Instagram, you can start to go down that rabbit hole to notice, oh, hang on a minute. Why has she got, 1 million followers? Oh, okay. The little girl inside of me who learned this from a young age by just looking at a magazine cover, because she's skinnier. Because she's
That's where every woman's mind goes.
Okay, that's why. And then you feel depressed and you feel horrible. And you
talk about a narrative, right? There's your narrative. That's why he has more.
Nancy, can you talk about first, you have been a writer, you've been in this field for so long. We once used to value a Sunday. My mum would, read a feel-good book. I grew up as a kid. She'd paint her nails. We knew Sunday was a day of rest. I watched my mum just be able to sit with a cup of tea,
Right.
really calm and really peaceful. I then learnt in this journey, when I tuned into sitting down even for 10 minutes to do mindfulness meditation, I was agitated. I was like, I can't sit still. I'm agitated. Like, and then totally freaking out, going, oh my God, it's like being a junkie. Where's my phone? Where's my phone?
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to more and more people who are having a difficult time, one, to relax, and a difficult time to the point now they can't sit at a waiting room without looking at their phone. So what's going on with us, Nancy? What's happening?
Well, you spoke to so many of the issues, and I agree with every single thing that you said. That's why I wrote a book about it. And I, like you, shared an addiction to my everything, my phone, my laptop, whatever I could get my hands on. When I would hear that, ta-da, it was like, oh God, okay, the needle's in, this is good. And I, being a conscious person, was not okay with that level of not okayness. And I think, as we had talked about a little bit before, there are some really, really, really smart people working for these big companies who know a lot about psychology and know what's seductive to our attention and where we get caught. And as the species of the human being is studied more and more, I hate to say this because it sounds pessimistic, but part of what's being studied is how is our attention grabbed? How do we get pulled down the rabbit hole? So we need not feel guilty or like it's a failing that we're getting addicted. That's the goal of these companies. Money, attention is money, right, for them. So first is to forgive oneself in that regard. But I think there comes a point where we want ownership of our own life back. And, I'm always surprised by how people come to me from all over the world wanting me to tell them, when you're at the bus stop, don't pick up your phone. Or when you're at the dinner table, all phones away. Or last hour of the day, think about your day. These very common sense, sort of obvious things. And what I end up more and more telling people is, you know what you need to do. You don't need me to say it's every 45 minutes, get up from your computer and take a walk outside without a phone, or make the bathroom a non-technology designated area, or your bedroom. I can do all that. But at some point, we have to decide that how we spend our life matters. And do we want to fritter it away down the Twitter hell or down the Instagram nonsense, right? But once we make that choice to take ownership of our own life, right, we'll figure out how to do it. We know when we're using addictively. I know when I pick up the phone because I don't know how to be where I am. And when I feel that urge, just like an addict to any substance, right, we want to pause and we want to say, because I'm not really interested in the 12 hours of Expedia or online shopping I'm about to do. What is it I don't want to feel right now that's leading me to use this form of anesthesia, this phone? So I've done enough work that I know to get behind the addiction and ask the question, what is here now? Is it boredom? Is it agitation? Okay, so let's get to know the agitation. Where do I feel it in my body? What's under the agitation, right? And can I take a couple deep breaths and just be here in the agitation before I medicate it with the phone? And usually, if we do that enough times, we don't really feel the need so much. It's like boredom, when we bring the light of awareness to it, is no longer boring, right? But I agree with you about something that you said, which is that we somehow, and it's kind of like carbon monoxide, we don't know how this happened. It sort of happened without any clear markers, but we don't experience ourselves any longer as a destination. Everything's out there, out, 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 out. Where's something interesting? What's coming in? Where? But we ourselves are kind of an empty vesicle waiting to be filled. And the same thing with the present moment. There's nothing here. What's next? Where are we getting to? FOMO. What's not here? So when your grandmother or your mother is sitting there with a cup of tea, she's saying this moment matters right here where I am, right? And that this is a place. So we have to get back into the habit of, how am I in this moment? What's here right now? What's happening in my sensations? What's happening in my mind as I turn the lens to what's my mind up to? What's here becomes a question that redirects us to be our own destination. And that is primary. If we are not a place of interest, of curiosity, of all of it, then we're on this perpetual road of chasing and striving and trying to get somewhere, which by our very being there is no longer a place.
Wow, Nancy, you really shared that, because when I think about social media in particular, when people are telling people you need to post 3 times a day, that gets you into the addictive thinking mode of, I've got to create content. What is it going to be? What's it going to do? How's it going to impact? Yes. What I've discovered is if you're going to creatively create content, it needs to arise from within. And so when I grew up, Nancy, we learnt a very valuable thing. And even as one of the first bloggers in the world back in blogosphere, we learnt that if you created a piece of art, and I say it like this. So if you go into an art gallery and there's a beautiful piece of art, once upon a time, we would admire it. We wouldn't rip it off the wall and walk out with it and say, right, I'm going to copy that. I'm going to do that. Because back in those days, we respected, this is an artist who's created this. That's theirs to own. Mm-hmm. That came from their own heart and soul, mm-hmm. and that arose from them. So let it be theirs. But what I'm seeing now, Nancy, is this whole notion, and I hear it in podcast shows, and I hear it where someone will go, I've started this business. And they'll go, well, where did you get the idea? Oh, well, I saw it online. Someone else was doing it in a different country. So I thought, why don't I do that?
Outside in, not inside out.
So what I'm seeing, there's a trend on just do what other people are doing. Yeah. So if you're going to be a content creator, you want to be a blogger, you're just doing it because someone else is doing it. And you don't even have to think about doing it. All you're going to do is go online, mm-hmm. look at all the photos and go, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I'm just going to replicate that photo and go to that exact same spot, because I see this all the time. I'm going to stand at that exact same spot, take that photo, and mm-hmm. done. So we're seeing a massive a social change of not being individual, not being creating from within.
Sure.
And just doing what everyone else is doing. Now, when I traveled, Nancy, and you probably can relate, I'm so grateful I traveled in an era around Europe where I just had a camera. I had to take the back of the camera out, put it into a shop, wait 3 days because it was cheaper at Boots in the UK, get the photos back.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about me.
Mm-hmm.
It was just I was in the place, we took a photo, off we went. But what I'm seeing now, and I saw this only yesterday, Nancy, is I'm walking on this beautiful walkway and I'm just mindfully walking. I'm practicing mindfulness, listening to my footsteps, feeling the wind, listening to the ocean. And I then see a couple, and an older couple, mind you. This affects all of us. Yes. So what happened was the husband had his arms crossed and he had his body language twisted away from his wife. She, I think, would be even late 60s. So this is affecting all ages. And she was just taking selfies of herself alone while he stood there thinking, this is ridiculous. Can you stop taking photos of yourself? I actually don't take selfies. And the reason I don't is, and I want to just touch on this, Nancy, with you, is I just feel that me posting photos of what I'm eating, and I know it's a trend, and like if I stood there like her and took photos of me, I would have missed the lizard. I would have missed the pretty little bird, missed the pretty little butterflies. So I'm learning to reconnect with Mother Earth and my surroundings by, one, not being obsessed with taking photos of myself, even on my walk, even on just a random normal day. And I'm just wanting to become more self-aware. Can you speak more on that, Nancy, and the importance?
Well, you're touching on all the big themes there. And I'm trying to think about where I want to enter there, because there's so much profound stuff in what you said. But right now, the only thing that matters is our identity, how we're seen, how are we viewed, right? How much me can I get out into the world? We're not really interested in being the artist. We're interested in being seen as the artist. And that fundamental change in what we value is somewhat terrifying, right? I have teenage kids, and it's all about what's their screen image. It's not about, there's not that much interest in being that person. It's really, our whole mission in life is, I'm on this walk. Oh, look at me. I'm a person who takes walks. Look at me. I'm in a meditative moment. I'm a meditator, right? But it's all about image. It's all about some very strange and new need for incessant validation, that you exist, that you're important. I see what you're doing. I like what you're doing. I think it's important. And there's a level of narcissism in our culture now that is startling, but it comes again at the expense of having any direct experience, because we're not actually in that walk. We're not on that walk. We're announcing that we're walking. And so it's very heartbreaking to me in a sense, because the whole experience that happens internally on that walk is lost. And those of us in the field of sort of philosophy and technology talk a lot about this, that it's a real tough nut to crack, this issue of coming back to what is inside me that wants to express itself, right? You talked about that artist, right? We don't trust anymore that there is something other than our mind, as we were talking about earlier. So the idea that something would emerge from us, some sort of creative spirit or drive or wanting, we don't imagine that that's true anymore. We imagine we have to keep telling ourselves, create something, right? Just be visible. Just be visible. That's the goal in life. So we never let ourselves get quiet enough because we don't think anything will come. We think the whole dog and pony show goes on above the shoulders. And so it's first, create. Doesn't matter what the content is, doesn't matter if it's related to you. But then on top of that, it's really, what does my content say about my identity? That's my real goal right now. And I am, thinking a lot about how do we unravel this, right? So like with my own children and all the people I talk to about returning to those activities that allow you to lose your sense of time, lose your sense of me doing it, those blessed flow experiences. We need those in our life to have, again, the experience of a doing without a me that's doing it, right? Or kids that get involved in things like sports or whatever it might be, that there's some experience of melting into the all, the experience itself, right? Because all of this, everything else we do is designed to create an identity. And I say this again, at the expense of living your life.
Yeah, you're so right, because when I've discovered this on my journey, that when I discovered, hang on a minute, what's the point of me even being in a place if I'm on the phone and I'm not even in that place? I'm just on the phone looking at Maggie May or Bobby Gill,
Yes.
in like wherever, Toronto or Singapore. Like, what's the point? Because just being present now, I feel, is going to be the most important thing, Nancy. And that's what I love your work. Because what I've noticed, saying on this walk, people just walk past, they wouldn't even know you're there because they're texting on their walk and they're not even aware. And we're supposed to be moving to this more friendlier community,
Right.
more loving, more compassionate, more let's unite. Well, it's very hard to unite in a community if everybody has their heads down
You
and
bet.
no one's even aware where they are.
You bet. And I fear that compassion is actually being sort of teched out of our basic DNA structure, because there is a lot lost when the way we're communicating is through a screen. We don't see the response. We can say terrible things to each other and we don't have to actually experience the other person's suffering. How perfect, how utterly perfect for us. So, I hear these horrible stories from all these getting ghosted. You have a relationship and then the person disappears. This is now normal behavior. And that is coming from this new way of communicating with each other, that we don't feel empathy because we're really in a relationship with the screen more than we are with the other person. And so, as you say, what am I doing? What is the purpose of all of this if I don't get to be in any of these moments of my life? I'm not actually there, right? I'm always, you go to a party, everyone is texting with somebody who's not at the party. When did here and now get kidnapped for something else? So when you become aware of that, it becomes really delicious to be the one in the room who's just here, who's put away her phone, right, and is paying attention. And what people say to me, because they're honest with me most of the time, is, but it's so much more interesting on the phone. It's so much more exciting. That's often true. But if we abandon the present moment, it gets less and less and less interesting, right? So if you're in a couple 20 years and you get in bed with your iPhone, right? Because there's a lot more juicy stuff going on the end of that than another conversation you've had a million times. But every time you do that, another drip kind of comes out of the relationship and how interesting you can find it. Nothing happens if we don't put effort into it. And the effort comes from paying attention to what's happening right here, even if it's not as juicy. It's our job to find the juice in the moment, even if it's just in, sometimes I'll say to myself, how insane is it that I exist, that I'm here? We take that so for granted, in our, look up with this and that. But oh my God, there's an awareness here that came to be. Sometimes when you can catch that aroma, your life starts to have a lot more grace in it.
Nancy, that's incredible, because just going back to the present moment and being that girl or person in the room and being an observer, it's actually so interesting at any restaurant or coffee shop. And because you get to see, like when I go to the coffee shops, I don't have my phone out. And so one of my practices is not to have my mobile phone if I'm with other people for coffee, lunch, or dinners. And Good. Would you say, Nancy, that is one area, if we want to build stronger relationships with our family, or say you matter. Yes. You matter more than me. You matter. What I discovered is you matter more than some stranger over in America that I don't even know. Like exactly. I kind of feel like it sends a message, because I've been out with people who, like, literally I'm there for coffee and it's like, oh, hey, going to bed. Oh, just got to check this.
Yes.
What have you been up to? Oh, have you seen this post? And then and I'm thinking, and they're on their phone. Oh, I just got to take a photo of this latte. I just need to upload this story. And I'm thinking, okay.
Get me out of here.
And it just makes you feel like, well, why did we even bother catching up for a coffee? Or like, who are you here for?
You know what I love to do? I love to, and I do it often, is when I meet with a friend, I'll say, I'd like it if both of us put our phones away. And what's been interesting for me is most people are so happy to be led there, and they happily give it away, because we all want an invitation back into connection. We really do. And so I always encourage people to be the light in the darkness. Have the courage to say, when we take that walk or grab that coffee, I'd like to do that without our phones. I have almost, with one exception, I have run into incredible relief and appreciation that we're all dying to just be in one place. We really are, but we don't feel we can. We don't really know how to do it anymore. But I absolutely encourage people, when they're connecting with friends, put your phone away, because you are announcing loud and clear how important that other person is by where your phone is. If you want that relationship to matter and to have depth, you have to do the harder task of not being so entertained. And guess what? When you're with other humans in person, sometimes there are awkward moments. Sometimes there are gaps, right? The reason we love texting is because as soon as there's a gap, you just go away, right? Or there's always something quippy and fun to say. But in real life, it's a little bumpier. And that's okay. We have to get back to kind of getting comfortable with We're two human beings coming together and allowing for that, almost enjoying it. But we have to relearn how to be together in body to body. But the other thing, which you know and we all know, is that the nourishment that comes from spending an hour with somebody in person is an entirely different animal than what comes from a text exchange. Right? We're dying of spiritual anorexia. We're dying of, sort of disconnection and loneliness at a deep level. We have all these people we text with all the day, we share, emojis with, but we are really starving for deep connection. I hear about it all day long in my practice. So that can only come when we do this hard work of coming together. And when we make plans, it's not a matter of I'll pencil you in and then 5 minutes before I get a rain emoji, rain check because I had a late night. No, when we make commitments to people, honor them. Some of this is just, it's not rocket science. It's going back to a system of values and valuing human beings and our presence together. And we reap what we sow. The relationships deepen. We feel more connected. Things slow down. We're where we are. And it can come from just simply making time for people without distraction.
Love that. Simply making time for people without distraction. And one of the things I've learned, Nancy, is it's really important for me if I have, say, my nieces or younger children to be the example.
Yeah.
I can't expect them, like as an example, if I'm on my phone, I'm busy and I'm not paying them any attention, they're actually going to mirror that.
Of course.
They're going to be a mini me being on their phone. And then and what's interesting, when I grew up and I used to go and see my Auntie Flo and Uncle Eric, just the excitement of visiting them every week and seeing them in person and getting out of the car as a little girl and hello, Auntie Flo, hello, Uncle Eric, and sitting with them in their presence. And we did that every week. My dad took me there. It was the greatest memories to this day I cherish. But what I've noticed now is young children, whether it's their mum, dad, aunties, we're getting upset at times or frustrated or still can't get our heads around this, how the young kid might be 10 years old on their phone, you've arrived and it's no hello, no nothing. They're so busy just down head on the phone looking. And I guess we have to actually say, no, this isn't acceptable. No. If you have an elder, I'm sorry, you need to learn, but that's how addictive the phones are.
Yes, and we accept it. We accept it with our kids, right? We allow that. We're not here to be our kids' friends. We have to do the hard work. If that's not acceptable, it's a human being here, and that's up to us as the grown-ups to not always be pleasing to our kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Not always be their buddy. Right? We have to do this hard work. They don't know about this world that you and I came from. So they don't know what they're losing. That's up to us to let them know that. They just think this is the way it is.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. Because when you realize human nature, human value is someone comes into your home, you stop everything, whatever age you are, you put it down and how are you? Can I get you a drink of water? And we have to relearn these skills. But what I've done, Nancy, is I'm taking responsibility. I'm taking ownership. If we were blessed to be raised in eras where these common courtesy, this very basic human nature, we had the opportunity to learn this. It's our responsibility now to practice it.
Absolutely. And teach it.
Yes. and teach it. So we have to be aware. So would you say, Nancy, change can only come from us being aware, like you said, practicing it and teaching it?
There's no magic bullet here. We have to walk the walk. We have to, at some point, take back ownership of our own lives, right? We have this idea that, oh, it's so big, I can't, it's overwhelming, I have no choices. That's not true. Every single day, we have an opportunity to restart our relationship with technology. Every single minute, we have an opportunity to define and determine how we want to be in a world that's gone crazy. No one determines that for us. No one. So yes, maybe our work requires us to be on until 7. There's certain things we have to work with. But again, if we are conscious of, I'm being asked to do this work, I'm not going to go off on 35 different windows while it's going on. When I get up and I have a conversation with my kid, I'm not going to have it also still go. Within even the limitations of certain work environments, there are infinite choices that we can make, which give us freedom with technology, not from it, because we're not looking for from it. It's helpful in many ways. I couldn't get to the corner store without a GPS, right? I appreciate that. But freedom in technology. So all these choices, we're not sheep, but we have to wake up and say, oh my God, my life, my short existence is being kidnapped by this nonsense, right? I didn't care about this person in high school. Why am I Facebooking them? Why am I researching what they're doing? Because I can't bear empty space. I don't know how to fill it, right? So I'll do anything, any nonsense to keep myself occupied. Okay, so what are we really so afraid of? Right. One of the things too that, I talk a lot about, which is, again, raising a next generation where everything about themselves is in comparison to someone else. There is no self-experience that is its own thing. They're always inadequate. They're always measuring themselves against a photoshopped Instagram post. This idea of what life is supposed to look like, always on some yacht, in Bora Bora with a glass of champagne, wearing but it's all made up. And it's like, again, the emperor has no clothes. We're chasing something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. And Nancy, when it comes to what we've learned in this pandemic, and I learned this because I used to be an Aussie farmer and lived on the land, and I can tell you from that experience, Nancy, and you'd be able to resonate, nothing comes easily. Nothing's instant. Like when we grow, prepare the land, grow a crop, we're looking at a good 3 to 6 months. And then what we've discovered is you can go to all that hard work and it just gets wiped out, either by the weather or the market crashes and you don't get paid for it and you're broke on broke. Like it's just relentless hardship. But what I'm learning is, so I grew up knowing life is hard. Life is like a Rocky movie, you get smacked down, or I used to say Muhammad Ali, smack down, get back up, smack down, get back up. But I'm learning that there's a notion that life is easy. Like you said, life is all about the champagne, the glitz, the glamour, because that's what's being sold to us. But the reality is no, it's not. And I think the global pandemic has proven and shown, especially even the younger generation, that whilst everyone wants to click their fingers like, I want to click this, I want the COVID-19 to be over, it's got to be instantly over, done.
Absolutely.
And I can't, I can't do the Bora Bora photos, or I can't do what I used to do. So people are totally, I guess, freaking out that they can't do what they want. What they once did is taken away. And now the harsh reality is some of these businesses that were created during the good times sadly have fallen over. And people are kind of really waking up that life isn't all unicorns and rainbows and, whereas I guess my grandparents who went through World War II in France and then wanted to come to Australia for a better life, they grew up in much harsher times. Like, they weren't obsessed with taking photos. It didn't exist. Or believing they'd be running around the world just drinking champagne. They knew that hard work and family and safety and community and connection were the most important things,
Right.
and health, obviously. But
I think, the important thing there, in some sense, is that we're chasing the wrong things, because your grandparents and my grandparents and parents, they understood that hard work and effort and community are actually what feed us. If we get to the top of the mountain, walking it every step, boy, do we enjoy the top of that mountain. If we get to the top of the mountain by helicopter or, virtually, by putting on a pair of glasses, we don't get to own and inhabit and take away all of what we get when we do it. And we do it, and it's hard, right? Again, we reap what we sow. Our younger generations are adverse to hard work. They, as you said, they think that everything should come immediately. It should be easy. It should be fun. And, without denigrating them, because it's not their fault that they feel
yes,
that way.
yeah.
But what ends up happening is that nothing feeds them. Nothing is satisfying, because, it's not just that they don't live in reality. One young woman I was talking to, she's in a French class, and she just, Google translation. I said, but do you want to know, how to speak the word? No. Why would I need to know? I just Google That's the attitude, which is whatever gets me there fastest and easiest. Easy, convenient, fast, all of these things, which is insane on one level. But my deeper concern is that those don't lead us to any sense of deep confidence. They don't lead us to any sense of fulfillment, right?
Yeah,
When
right.
things get really, really, really hard in what I'm doing, I go back to those hundreds and thousands of hours in the saddle,
Mm.
and 3 a.m, and getting that horse to lift its knees up a certain way, and, getting that, all of that went into that. Nobody did that but me. And that is a strength that we can build, but only through hard work, effort, time. Doesn't happen
Yeah.
quickly. And
Yeah.
I'm so disheartened that our young folks are not getting the gift of that.
Yeah. And you touched on, because you're equestrian, to prepare for the show takes so much work, and this is work that other people don't see.
Not glorious.
I mean, this really is, even when I think about having a mental health podcast show, what people don't realize is this was born from the days of having a shovel and shoveling dirt and trudging in mud and actually working through this adversity and hardship. And when I said to someone, look, COVID-19 right now, that would be like hardship. Think of that for 5 years straight. On average, we have 5 bad years, 1 good year.
Wow.
You will at some point mentally break, but what I discovered in the journey, even if your mind doesn't function as it should, or your thoughts, it's nearly like your spirit, it becomes bigger than all of that. The spirit will always shine through. So connecting to our heart and spirit, Nancy, is so important. And I've always said this on my journey, that brands have a lot to answer for, and even social media apps. If a young child knows, or person, or anyone, that they can take a photo in a bikini looking sexy and get free bikinis, they get free champagne or a free holiday, brands have a responsibility to go, what constitutes an influencer? What really are we sending a really good message to say you can look great being 21 in a bikini and you're going to get everything free? And see, we've sent the wrong message, and this is collectively, and brands have to have a real good look at themselves, because the message would be, when we were writers, rule of thumb, you're going to write for free for 6 years and get nothing.
Yeah, you're right.
What you're going to get, though, is you sharing your heart and soul, you connecting to people, and you helping people.
Exactly. Which is something we don't really value anymore.
Yeah, so we kind of miss this along the way, where, so getting back to those. So if there are any brand managers listening in today to Nancy and I, and companies, you've got to take responsibility for, what are you sharing with the world? Are you sharing you don't have to work, you just have to look good and you'll get everything for free? Because we know that's not the best message. Now, Nancy, I could ramble on and rant on about this, but before we say goodbye, I want to just ask you, what are some of your self-care rituals? Like, you're always helping others, you're giving so much. Right. You live a busy life in New York City, but how do you take care of your own self?
I have a meditation practice, so very brief, but for 10 or 15 minutes a day, I sit down and take a snapshot, what's happening. I breathe. I am a very big believer in the use of the body. As the body is it's a direct flight into now. So we can't be in 1,000 other places when we're focusing on our body. Body has this beautiful quality to it that it's always present. So all through the day, I stop and drop. I stop what I'm doing. I drop out of my thinking mind, as if gravity were working on my attention. I come down below my neck, and I just check in with my body. I just check in with the sensations. I check in with the subtle inner body experience of just being, that sort of hum, vibration of aliveness. I take a really nice deep breath, and I go back to what I'm doing. And when I go back to what I'm doing, I'm not just kind of, it's either that or it's now I'm back in wild mind. I'm mindfully re-entering this state of contents, where now there's all of this going on. Another practice that I love to do, and I do throughout the day, I practice non-judgmental seeing. So one looks around the room, takes about 30 seconds, and you just look. I'm not saying curtain. I'm not saying, oh, I have to take that to the dry cleaner. I'm not saying, oh yeah, that book I need to look at. I'm just looking. And I do that a couple times a day, which sort of unsticks us from all of our ideas and narratives about everything. And it puts us back. It's like diving into the ocean without a wetsuit on. It puts us directly into contact with reality, outside of our notions about it. And another thing, I certainly practice all of the things we talked about with technology. just to stay, keep my program going and not go back to that addiction. But another thing that I do is I check in with myself all through the day, and just to kind of, how are we? How are we doing in this moment, in the midst of all this? I'm making myself a destination again and again. So all my energy is going out, 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 and I just gather it up and say, what's going on here?
Oh,
Those are
wow.
some practices among many.
Yeah. No, I just love that, Nancy, that you becoming the destination and you checking in with how are you? How are you feeling? I just felt so deeply relaxed when you even just took us through really like a body scan, but just how you, with the gravity, feeling it coming down. And you're so right. Sometimes we can just live up from shoulders up, shoulders to head up. But how you just sort of explained how we can just then take a moment to feel into the body
That's
and
it.
just bring our presence and right
That's the
down to our
whole thing.
toes.
The
Yeah.
body is our portal, and we walk around on this incredible entity and don't even realize the power of it. I love the image. For me, I use it all the time, and I offer it to your audience. But
Yeah.
we drop out of, if you imagine the ocean, I love the ocean. So at the top of the ocean is all these choppy waves. We can imagine that, like the choppy waves of mind and thought. And throughout the day, we take an elevator ride down into the bottom of the ocean, and that velvety blue black stillness and silence, that hum at the bottom of the ocean, way below the surface chop of mind, we can actually, in a minute's time, drop down into this body and find a refuge, find a peace that we will never find in our mind.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I love how you explained about the ocean and the choppiness, but then just really feels like the mind, with all the news going on with COVID and everything, or life, and then just coming underneath that ocean and then just dropping down. So calming and so relaxing. Even the thought of thinking about it, but, Nancy, I want to ask you before we say goodbye. I got rid of Facebook on my phone, and I did this during the pandemic because people I noticed were fighting. Someone had an opinion and would leave a comment, and then someone else would have another opinion. They were going head to head. What I discovered was that if I consumed any of that content, it was conflict, it was fighting, it was
Toxic.
anger, frustration. Yeah, toxic. That's the word. So I got rid of it.
Good.
So now I've had so much more time to myself. Like, obviously at night, I love to read books. And that's
Wonderful.
what we're going to share before we say goodbye to you, how we can actually get a hold of your books and read your books. So one of the things I've done during the global pandemic, which I love and going to continue, is switching, looking at my phone at night. I completely put it on airplane mode, put it away, and get out a good book. I read.
And that's good for your brain. That's also very good for attentional focus.
Yeah, and my mental health has been, and my overall health and well-being and fulfillment has been the best it's ever been. And that's why I'm so passionate about having the book podcast, mental health podcast, because I'm like, you people, like, to my listeners, you've got no idea. My anxiety was through the roof, like off the scales. But this moment you put the phone down, turn it off, I actually have to put it in a separate room. Otherwise, I'll want to go and look at it.
That's okay.
Completely put it away.
Yeah.
I've switched off to the rest of the world. Done. I'm out. And then I'm engrossed in a book where I'm learning about another person, learning about their journey, learning about something new. And it's so, how can you not get excited? And I can see all the books behind you, Nancy, and you obviously love to write and read.
Of
But
course.
even going back to this like basic old school practice can
Yeah.
help anyone, can't it, who's suffering anxiety or depression or comparison or whatever it might be. Would
Right.
you say, Nancy, like that's so incredible, the power of reading?
It is. We know that for our nervous system. It calms our nervous system and it reacquaints our mind with staying with one subject, right? It's being trained now to jump. And every 10 seconds or so, it needs a new jump. But you're literally retraining your mind to stay. We're training our attention to stay. We're training our body to stay. This is the most important skill we can ever develop, which is through boredom, through agitation, stay. Just stay through it. But I would say one thing too, which is, a lot of people talk to me about, oh, I should take up reading or I should, do this and this and this, but they're still keeping their primary addiction going. And just like I say to an alcoholic or a drug addict, until you work with your addiction, nothing else can really happen. So we want to keep on the phone, but add reading, right?
Yeah,
It
got
doesn't
you.
work
Yeah.
that way. We have to be willing to shift our relationship with technology in order to even be able to think about reading.
Create that boundary and space, which is what I had to do, which is go, you know what? If I had my mobile phone here and the book,
You wouldn't do it.
no, exactly. And then when I'm like, right, I've got to literally get this phone out of this
Yeah.
room if I'm going to
Yeah.
read these books. And, I have dyslexia. Now, if I can read, and this is just through being a small kid and mum taking me to the library every Friday, she taught me, right, you're just like a bit like with you as an equestrian with the horses, you're just going to go back. You're going to train. We're going back and back and back.
Back again.
So really, I feel if anyone does struggle with reading just even a few lines, you will get better. But you're right, we've got to identify that we've even got the addiction. So Nancy, I know now that you don't check your phone regularly, like you carve out times.
Right.
And I've followed your words of wisdom on that. So I'll carve out a bit in the morning, but after self-care, of course, little bit just middle of the day, boom. And I try to do the evening, but kind of like a little bit after sundown, but not too late, because if I do it too late at night, I'm wired.
Get your mind busy again, right? But don't graze. That's really the point. It's not about checking all the time. Set some designated, 3 times a day. The president is not probably contacting you. It's not an emergency. and just set a few times where you tech. And then there can be, okay, tech time, now's present. Now I'm with tech, now I'm present again. It's not this constant, I could check. You're taking that out.
Yeah. And Nancy, when I've been consuming your content, and can I say for everyone to get onto your YouTube channel, Nancy Collier, Collier, because you've got some incredible YouTubes there where you're teaching us how to become present, teaching us how to overcome addiction to our mobile phones and social media. Yes. Can't Stop Thinking. We must grab a copy of Can't Stop Thinking, but you've got so many incredible books. Nancy, what's the best way to stay in touch with you after this podcast show?
My website is nancycollier.com, 1L. My books are all on Amazon and everywhere they sell books. The new one for anybody that suffers with a kind of relentless rumination and obsessive thinking, I hope it helps. And of course, the book's on technology and all that. The blog is on Psychology Today, and I work with people around the world. If anybody's ever interested in talking something through personally, That's always a good idea sometimes. And that's through my website.
Yeah, well, I love your work, Nancy Collier, and it's just been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Like, you seriously, when we look at what we need today, is someone like yourself who really, you're living it, but from a young age, you've learnt about spirituality or how you're more than your body, mind, or thoughts, but also through your work, your own, and just you work with so many people,
Yeah.
and you have for decades, and you've really, you're hearing people firsthand of how they're feeling, and what are the pressures and what are the challenges, and with all of that, you are really highlighting the need to just for us to come back to ourselves, to connect with ourselves, to get comfortable just being on our own with ourselves without
Back to
anything
a
in
place
our
of
hand.
meaning. Back
Yeah.
to meaning. To
Back
what
to
really
meaning.
matters.
Yeah. Meaning, values, fulfillment.
The young things.
Yeah. So I can't wait to have you on the show again, Nancy Collier,
Anytime.
because I could have talked to you for hours and hours and hours, and that's why it's called a talk show, which you would appreciate as a talk show producer. But what the work you do, I'm so passionate about, and I'm sharing it with as many people as I can. And I would inspire everyone to share this podcast show today with Nancy and Nancy Collier, because what I know for sure is you may be out there like I once was, thinking, why am I feeling so anxious? I don't get this. I've got a good job.
Yeah.
I'm traveling the world.
Sure.
Why? And this was even before the pandemic. I don't get it. I get it. I'm spending way too much time on social media. That's making me feel anxious.
Or
And
I'm spending way too much time imagining on my mind, imagining I have no thoughts. So every negative or anxious thought that appears, I have to chase it. I have to be anxious. I don't want that.
Yeah, and now, Nancy, with this rise in youth, sadly, mental health issues, which is taking really innocent lives out through mental illness, or we've got real challenges with youth and technology, and sadly, mothers and fathers and families are losing their children due to mental health, and reports are showing it can be linked to loneliness, it can be linked to anxiety, to bullying, and depression, and sometimes overuse of technology. So this is another reason I would love for everyone to share this podcast show. It's not just about me or Nancy Collier or about you today, but just educating everyone on how we can live a better life in the present moment. So thank you again, Nancy.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I'd be delighted to come back anytime.
Yeah, I love you to bits. So we'll say goodbye to Nancy Collier. Thank you to everyone who's tuned into the Spirit Girl podcast show. Be sure to subscribe, leave a rating and review, and to tell someone you love to. And together, let's feel good from within. Bye for now. Bye.